Hello YouTubers, it's Savio here. Today I just wanted to make a little bit of a revamp on the video I made about hotkeys in the level design series that I made. And this one's just going to be more general hotkeys, and I might show the hotkeys that I also showed in the level design series, but I wanted to cover them in more of a broad understanding for just everyone in Unreal in general. So I'm just in a first-person template project. I haven't put anything into it yet. It's just a blank project. So I can hit play and play around with the first-person character. But I just want to show you some hotkeys. So if I just drag in, actually before I do that, so if you guys don't know how to move around the world yet, you can just hit your right mouse button and you can look around with your camera. Now, while you're holding your right mouse button, you can use the WASD keys, which for most gamers should be pretty fluent and easy to kind of get the feel for. And you can move around with WASD based on your camera's relative location and rotation. The second one is you can also use your arrow keys with, if you have nothing else pressed, you can use your arrow keys and you can kind of go forwards, back, left, and right. The same as if you were using your WASD keys, but if you don't have the right mouse button clicked, then sometimes the arrow keys are just a quick method of quickly moving left and right in the direction of your camera. So that's the arrow keys. The first specific hotkey I want to tell you about, it'll have to do with with a mesh. So if we drag like a cube or anything, any kind of mesh into your world, you can switch between your 4 different modes up here. So you can either select one of these buttons and you can notice it'll change my pivot type from move, rotate, and scale. And this one's just select, so I can just select things and it won't have any gizmos on it. I'm gonna keep it in move. But if you want to use the hotkeys to switch between those, so Q will put you in select mode, W will put you in move, E will put you into rotate. I know, it's kind of weird, they didn't bind that to R, but R is going to be scale. So it's a little bit tricky to get used to because some people moving from maybe a 3D software, R might be scale and E might be, or R might be rotate and E might be scale, or S might be scale, or something like that. So it's a little bit tricky to get used to, but Q, W, E, and R are going to be your 4 main keys for switching between those types, which is kind of nice once you get used to it. Now, the 5th hotkey I want to show you is F. So F, what it'll allow you to do is focus on the current object that you have selected. So this is really nice, even if I'm like out here and I can't see my object, but I know for a fact that my cube is the one I want to focus onto. So if I had a house or something like that and I knew what it was called in the hierarchy, naming those things are important, because when you have like 50,000 objects in your world, it'll start to get quite overwhelming. But I'm just going to click on the cube and hit F. And you'll notice it'll focus right to that object. It won't re-rotate my camera or anything. So once you get focused onto the object, there's actually a couple things I want to show you before that. So I'm just going to drag my cube up and focus onto my object using F. And it's a little bit above the ground, but sometimes, like, if I'm not on a grid placement, like if I turned grid snapping off and I'm just moving freely, you can see it gives you really arbitrary numbers. Like it's just like 0.99, 0.996621. Like we don't want those random numbers unless it's like just a prop living in the world. But if it's like a box or a house or something like that, we likely want it to stick to a grid placement of some sort. I usually like to stick to 10 or above if I can. But if you are in this case and you just want to snap your object to the ground, like say you're placing a water bottle on top of a table or something, and you want it to sit onto the table. So picture the floor as my table, and this is my bottle of water. So when I have it selected, I don't think it matters if you're in move, scale, or rotate, but if I just hit end, you can see, yeah, I'm in rotate and it still worked. So if I hit the end key, which is right beside your delete key and your page down key, it's usually located above your arrow keys on full-size keyboards. Some smaller 60% keyboards or 65% keyboards might need you to hit a function key or something to access the end key, but really handy for dropping your object down to the ground, and it'll detect the lowest surface, lowest collision surface below that object. So if your mesh doesn't have collision, this will not work, but our floor does have collision. Now the seventh hotkey I want to show you is easy if you just want to see stuff. So I have my cube selected right now. If I hit H, which is the hotkey for hiding objects, so you'll notice if you try and hit H again, it won't do anything. But if I hit Shift H, or sorry, Control H will actually bring that object back, as long as you didn't go around and select another object. If you did, you might have to find it in your hierarchy and turn the visibility back on. But I'm just going to hit H and Control H to bring it back. Now the eighth hotkey I want to show you is the next three, I guess, are going to make it a little easier for you to navigate around an object that you have selected. So if I have this object selected and I hit F to focus on it, if I'm holding Alt and my left mouse button, I can roll and pitch around my object that I have selected and that I'm focused on, sorry. So if you have another object focused, like if I have this object focused and I go to select that one, if I'm holding Alt, you can see it'll still pan or pitch and roll around the object that I had focused. So that's really important to know. So I'm just gonna pitch and roll around this object using Alt and left mouse. And if you are, say, really close to your object and you're panning around, or you're pitching around and rolling around, and you want to zoom out, continue holding Alt and use your right mouse button and go left and right with your mouse. And you'll notice going left zooms out, going right zooms in. So Alt and right mouse button for that. The third one for kind of navigating around, which will actually be the 10th hotkey that I show you in this video, is the middle mouse button. So if you continue holding Alt the same way that we were rolling and zooming into our object, use the middle mouse button this time, and you can actually pan around your object, or pan from your camera's relative position, sorry, and you can kind of look around your object from left and right, up and down, and it'll stay flat on that on the origin of your camera. So if I'm like really zoomed in here and I want to see like the left side of my cube or the right side of my cube, I can just kind of go over to that corner. So it's kind of nice. You don't have to like remove your camera around like this with your WASD keys and try and get lined up. You can just focus on your object and kind of see that position that you want to see. So the 11th hotkey that I want to show you will make it really easy for placing objects and moving them around the world. So if I'm in my move tool, this doesn't really work in rotate or scale. It's mostly just for moving objects around. But if I hold Shift and click an axis with my left mouse button, continuing to hold Shift, you'll notice that my camera follows the object that I'm currently moving and on the correct axis. So even if I go up, holding Shift, it'll follow that axis. I can kind of pan around it to see the y-axis, and it'll move with it. So I'm still holding Shift this whole time. And then if I don't want that and I want it on the ground, I can hit End, and you'll notice, because my gun has collision, it'll detect that as the lowest point. But if I move it over here a little bit and hit end, it'll detect the floor. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The 12th hotkey that I want to show you is something you may not use often, but it's really, really handy if you're placing certain things in the game and you just want to see how it looks like. So the easiest way to show this is with this collider around the gun. And what this collider does is it just detects when the player walks into it and attaches the gun to the player. That's set up by default in Unreal, but the collider is actually a hidden in-game object, so you won't see this collider in-game. And if you're in editor mode without having to actually press play and go in the game, you just want to see what it looks like without those hidden in-game items, you can just hit G. And what G does is it puts it in game mode. So you can see it also hided my gizmo, and everything I'm seeing right now is just what the player would see in play mode. So I don't actually have to play the game to do that. And you can just hit G again to bring everything back. The 13th hotkey I want to show you is how to show navigation meshes. So this also may not be used often, but if I am doing AI of any sort and I pull in nav mesh bounds volume, you'll notice there's nothing showing up right now, but what this does is it's a zone that AI can move around in. It pretty much tells the AI, hey, that if I'm in a nav mesh bounds volume, I can move around those areas. And if you want to see how that works and where the AI can actually go, Unreal's made a debug system for that. And all you have to do is hit P, and you'll notice I have this little green, oh, it took a second to render, but I have this little green box, and this shows me where my AI can walk around. And like I said, you might not use this right away, but it will be useful in the future. So even if I put it on the corner here, you'll notice it automatically kind of generates the corner. So AI can't go up here currently because there's no nav mesh there. But if I made this bigger, typically don't scale either. It's better to actually, it's better to actually size the box using the brush settings rather than scaling. And if you ever have a brush setting for any type of volume in Unreal Engine, I know I'm kind of going off topic here, but if you ever have any volume inside of Unreal Engine, always try and manipulate it with the brush settings rather than scaling it. It's never really good to scale because then you have these really odd numbers up here. Just use the brush settings if you can. So I'm just going to hit P and I can turn that back off. So the 14th hotkey I want to show you is for moving your light source around. So you'll notice that my light source here, it's producing light from the sun there, and if I want to move this around, it adjusts the light. And that's just by selecting it and rotating it. But for example, let's say your sun is way the hell on the other side of the world and you don't know where it is. You don't want to find it in the outliner and you're just being lazy. You can hit Control, I'm just going to select something else first. So you can hit Control L. And what Control L does is it brings up this little gizmo there. So you have to continue holding Control after you hit L. Oh, sorry. So yeah, Control L, and then you can move your mouse around. You don't have to click anything with your mouse. You can just move it around while holding Control L, and you can adjust your light source and where it's rotated. So you can find a good position for it. I'm just going to put it right on the top for now. And once you let go of Control L, it'll automatically disappear after like 5 seconds or something like that. And then the last key that I want to show you is it's actually an assortment of keys, and it's something that you will probably use often if you're doing a lot of art stuff, BSPs, landscaping, mesh painting, anything like that. So on the top left, you'll have this little drop down with select mode. And there's select mode, landscape mode, foliage mode, mesh paint, modeling, fracture, brush editing, and animation. So there's a lot. And there's actually the hotkeys printed right beside it. So there's shift 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I actually changed this one to shift 4 and mesh paint to shift 6 in the hotkey settings. You can change your hotkeys for pretty much anything in Unreal Engine, and I just changed around brush editing to shift 4 because that's what it was in Unreal Engine 4. And you'll notice it'll pull up different menus when you switch between the modes. So this will give me the foliage menu when I hit shift 3. It'll give me the brush editing mode for shift 4, which by default will be shift 6. Shift 5 will be modeling mode, so it'll give you this menu for modeling and shapes. Shift 6, which originally is brush editing mode, I have it changed to mesh paint mode, and it'll pull up the mesh paint tab. Then shift 7 isn't bound to anything, it's just shift 8, so shift 8 will bring up your animation menu. So I don't really use that often, but I kind of want to figure out what that is. And yeah, that's pretty much all the hotkeys that I have to go over today, and I hope you enjoyed the video and that speeds up your workflow. Thank you.